Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, has recently released his Stockholders letter. And within it, we get to see a small bit of how Warren Buffett's mind works. We get this understanding on past investments, his current investments, and we also get to see two important things: his thoughts on the federal debt crisis, and we also get his thoughts on stock buybacks. These are both important topics, and it's important to get his perspective on them. So anyways, let's get into it. One thing to note is I'm only going over the highlights. So if you want to read the entire letter for yourself, which I think you should, go ahead and check out the link in the description below and you can read that. Anyways, guys, the number one thing I want to talk about is the incredible growth that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have been able to provide over the last 58 years. They have produced a 3,778,464% gain since the inception of Berkshire Hathaway. And that corresponds to a 19.8% yearly gain year over year, which is just incredible. To be able to almost double the S&P 500's return over a 58-year period is just something I can't even imagine being able to do. And that's why we need to pay close attention to what he's saying in this letter so we can learn from it. One of the first things Buffett brings up is his secret sauce. And this is how he's referring to his dividend investments. The two stocks he's talking about is Coca-Cola and Amex. They completed their purchase of Coca-Cola in 1994, and then in 1995 they completed all of the purchasing they're going to do for Amex. And within those two stocks, he talks about how well they really did. With Coca-Cola, they were able to make $75 million right away just off the dividend. For Amex, it was right around $41 million, so no small chunk of change. But with both of these investments, they did invest $1.3 billion. But he doesn't stop there. He starts talking about what happened with the growth and how that helped them actually create a larger dividend payment for themselves. Throughout the years, their investment did pay off and their dividend payments increased by a lot. For Coca-Cola, their dividend payments are now $704 million a year. For Amex, it's around $302 million. Both of these show how important it is for Berkshire to make these investments way back then, because it allowed them to get consistent cash flow and have something to work off of year after year. No matter what happens, they're going to get this large dividend payment. It makes a big difference in how they run their operations. Now, while these dividend payments have increased, so has the stock. And that's just all icing on the cake for Charlie and for Warren. Buffett starts out this section by stating that GAAP metrics don't really show the true picture of what's going on at Berkshire. Instead, he wants you to focus on net operating earnings, which is what he considers his most important metric. Overall, though, this just shows that things have been going well there, and it shows a little bit of a different metric compared to GAAP. And the reason Warren doesn't really like GAAP metrics is because they make you show a capital gain and loss, and that can be fluctuating greatly in between quarters and even year over year. But net operating earnings is a more consistent and better way, at least in his opinion, for an investor to understand what the company's doing, how they're doing, and where they possibly could go in the future. The next topic that Warren Buffett chooses to get into in this section is actually a very, very hot topic, and that is stock buybacks. And what he's saying here is that an investor can either benefit or actually be hurt by stock buybacks. They can benefit if the company decides that the stock is undervalued, and it actually is undervalued, and they choose to buy that stock up because it just makes sense if the stock's undervalued. On the other hand, though, if the company decides to buy their own stock at a high value when stocks are overvalued, it doesn't actually help anyone unless someone's willing to sell the shares at that price. That's the only person, the seller, that's making out any benefit from this. It actually hurts investors because it's driving the stock price up when it's already overvalued. Buffett then goes on to use some pretty strong language. He actually says that anyone that believes that stock buybacks are harmful to everyone is actually illiterate, which is unusual for someone like Warren Buffett, who's usually pretty laid back and calm. So leave a comment below if you actually think that Buffett's right here. Is someone completely illiterate, or at least in the wrong, if they actually think that stock buybacks are bad for everybody? Let me know in the comments below. In this section, we get to see where Warren Buffett thinks the future is for Berkshire Hathaway. He starts out by discussing that they started in textiles and that it was just a really bad investment for them to start out in. Luckily, they got out of it quickly and actually moved into insurance, which has been their bread and butter ever since. Throughout the last 58 years, though, they've worked hard to make sure they diversify themselves and they keep enough cash on hand that work themselves through any troubled waters or bad times that might come around. They're actually very proud to be one of 128 different companies within the S&P 500 that made over $3 billion in profit in 2021. This immense profit is partly due to being the largest shareholder in 8 of the largest companies in the world. And Warren wants you to know that these 3 things are going to make sure that they propel themselves into the future. And that is that they have a boatload of cash for any rainy day that comes up. They're well diversified. And number 3, that their CEO is also their chief risk officer, because that position cannot be delegated. It's too important. But those 3 things are what's making sure that Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway are in a great spot now and to continue doing well into the future. In this section of the letter, Warren Buffett chooses to hit another big topic, and that's the federal debt. He doesn't go in and say that he has a strong opinion because he doesn't think his opinion would make any difference in what will happen. He actually just provides the reader with some really great facts and allows them to come up with their own opinion based on these facts, which I think is really smart. The fact he gives is the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. He states that $100 bills stacked up to be $1 million will reach to about your chest area. But $1 billion, let me say that again, $1 billion and $100 bills stacked up will reach 3/4 of a mile up into the sky. And that just blows my mind personally of how big of a difference there is between $1 million and $1 billion. But that's a great fact that he gives us to help illustrate that. He's using this analogy to actually bring up taxes. And he's saying that the US Treasury brought in $32.3 trillion between 2011 and 2021. They also spent about $43.9 trillion in that same period. And he's saying that the 3 main places that we actually get that revenue from, that $32.3 trillion, is actually mostly individuals, then Social Security, and lastly, corporations. Of those corporations that pay taxes, Berkshire Hathaway just happened to pay $32 billion over that 10-year period. And that just happens to be 1/10 of 1% of the total tax revenue brought in. So here's an important thing that Warren Buffett says, and I want to highlight this for sure. He's stating that if 1,000 others would pay this same amount of tax that Berkshire Hathaway has paid over this 10-year period, then no individuals would have had to pay taxes because it wouldn't have been necessary. Overall, Warren Buffett wants to make sure that Berkshire Hathaway investors know they pay their fair share of taxes. Nonetheless, he wants them to also feel comfortable that they're going in the right direction with this company, whether he's there or not. They have a good plan in place and they're going to continue to do well throughout the years. The rest of his letter mainly talks about his relationship with Charlie Munger, his best friend and investor partner. So make sure you read that. It's on pages 9 and 10. I'm not going to go over that because that's not really a main highlight of the letter. But if you guys want to check that out, it's on pages 9 and 10. Remember, the link is in the description below. If you want to get into dividend investing like Warren Buffett, check out this video right here as it's going to give you a great ETF to consider. Otherwise, guys, I'll catch you in the next one.